Yes.
Do the brake and throttle. Okay.
It does feel, it's very on or off. Now, you also noted that the throttle is very digital. This is another thing we'll probably upgrade, is it's at lower RPMs, it's pretty go or not go. Oh my god.
That's how it works.
I gotta get on this. This fucking bike.
Fucking midget.
Oh god. Not all of us were so lucky in life. All right, I'll let you go around.
Sure.
For the yeah, I want to watch you crash.
Oh god, I'm gonna dip it.
I at least had like 5 miles yesterday of practice. Oh my god, it feels so big.
Good afternoon, YouTube. Welcome to Fair Face Fail Productions. So today we're going to be looking at comparing the differences between riding a electric dirt bike like the Talaria Sting and then riding a normal 300cc dirt bike. Throughout this video, I'm going to be kind of talking in between some of the parts where I'm talking actually out there riding and stuff. So we'll get kind of an idea of my first-hand experience as well as riding this. So I will be riding the Talaria Sting later down in the video. Meeker Extreme for right now is on the bike, but it'll give you a pretty good idea of going back and forth between the bikes. It's pretty different, actually.
Thought I was going to fall, didn't you?
You look better than I did on this. This thing being so short and small,
Yeah.
it was like...
That's what I was saying, is it was like, oh! You feel like you're going to face
I couldn't
plant.
do the brake and throttle it, so I was thinking about trying to go up it. I don't know, man. These tires are so small. Yeah, to hit that.
You're going to hit the middle. With enough.
This is the benefit, guys. You just gotta...
Do that with the GPX. Almost.
So first of all, I want to reiterate here because this is we're riding the Talaria Sting as a totally stock bike right now. There has been no modifications or improvements to it at all. The only things that we really did to the bike is I think I put 100 psi in the D&M fork, and it's pretty much turned all the way up. We really couldn't find a super happy medium for the fork, but yeah, so totally stock bike, stock battery, stock controller at this point. So we really wanted to kind of do an apples to oranges for comparing these electric versus kind of gas dirt bikes. And there's a lot of really big differences. So I think the first really big thing that stands out, as you saw in the last part there, was that the Talaria Sting is really, really light. I think on paper it weighs right around between 120 and 130 pounds. It's quite a light bike by comparison to a traditional dirt bike. Like what I'm riding here right now is the GPX Moto FSE 300. This bike, I believe, weighs right around 280 pounds, full of fuel. So not a light bike by any means. So the difference between riding a 130-pound bike and this is huge. In fact, going back and forth between the bikes was jarring. I really struggled, actually. A lot of it was like you get used to riding without a clutch on the electric dirt bikes, which is kind of a positive, kind of a negative maybe. We'll get more onto that one a little later on. But yeah, it's a totally different experience, and that's why I say... you know, a lot of people, oh, electric versus gas dirt bikes, you know, one's going to be better. I think it's just really kind of a totally different experience. You kind of have to get used to one or the other. And the Talaria Sting, in a lot of ways, has a lot of advantages in hard, rocky single track like this. It's very lightweight, like a trials bike type feel. And then it's also very torquey, very powerful to get over stuff. But yet it's... It's also kind of got some disadvantages with its current suspension setup. So, as it is stock, I think the stock forks are my least favorite thing about the bike, along with the handlebar position. That's not really fun for anybody either. But there's just a lot of things that I look at it as really just kind of an interesting segue into a different riding style and a different totally kind of yeah, it really is something like riding a different style of bike, and it is. With the stock Talaria, the other big thing that I noticed right away going back and forth was the 19-inch front wheel. You know, this when it's stock for stock, I think is the biggest sin of these e-bikes, is that they're not in a standard 2118 configuration. I don't really see why. I don't know. Maybe China just had a special on the 19-inch wheels, and that's why Saran and Talaria went this route. But that's the biggest downside. Going over obstacles, larger rocks, some other things is definitely way more brutal on that 19-inch wheel. You really have to plan on getting your weight back, using the throttle to pick up the front wheel a little bit. Yeah, you have to really plan that stuff because the front wheel just does not go over things. It's not just the fact that it's a 19-inch wheel. I also think the tires make a big deal. These are the stock tires too. But yeah, we struggled with the front wheel feel. You can definitely adjust for it, and it's definitely capable. It's just, you know, that'll be something we're definitely changing with some Warp 9 wheels. Yeah, especially for real dirt bikers out there. You're going to want a 21-inch wheel. No ifs, ands, or buts there. Now, I talked about it a little bit in my last video too, was that these are kind of a hybrid between a mountain bike and an electric dirt bike. They're really not a dirt bike chassis, if you will. They're kind of a mountain bike thing going on with the way the steering's set up, along with the suspension is very mountain bike-esque. So there's a lot of things, and I think on the side of it saves a ton of weight on how they set it up is really cool. And also you kind of get the disadvantages of maybe not having as capable of a suspension, although there's a ton of suspension options out there for these bikes. But stock for stock, because the GPX 300 is a stock, you know, dirt bike. This is a dirt bike you would buy for about $6,000 out the door. And the Talaria Sting is, as it sits right now, is about a $4,000 bike. Now, I'll go to say that, you know, the GPX Moto FSC 250E is also much cheaper too. Not cheaper, but same price. And at that price range, then it starts to get a little bit confusing because that's a $4,000 bike. And if you really want a capable dirt bike, it's really hard to say that, hey, this is a better bike. This is better than a gas dirt bike. In some ways, I find that hard to deal with. But given it's also a very different riding experience, it's a much lighter bike than an FSC 250E, I can kind of forgive some of that. And there's a lot of things that there's a lot less maintenance to do on something like the Talaria Sting. There's very little to do. There is oil in a gearbox that requires maintenance every so often, but nothing like constant oil changes and air filter cleaning, valve checks and stuff that you would do on a normal dirt bike. Those things just don't really exist on these electric bikes, and that's a huge advantage. So personal preference, as always with anything that you ride or buy, is going to really come into what is really better for you versus electric or a gas dirt bike. There's nothing wrong with either, in my opinion.
Oh god, it's so little.
This is so big. Whoa, big and hairy.
Alright guys, back on the Talaria. So I'm kind of terrified because, you know, we did a little bit of a trickier trail and I let Mark have fun on this and he did phenomenal compared to, you know, me. I mean, oh god. I always fall on this, for the record.
The next thing I'll touch on is battery life and range. So this is something, of course, we get questions on more and more, and I just don't have enough data. We really haven't ridden this enough. We're in the winter season right now, so riding has been more limited than, of course, we would like it to be on this bike. Now, with the stock battery, we were out here for, I don't know, I want to say 2.5, 3 hours, a little bit longer maybe. On the slow single track stuff, the battery life is absolutely excellent. You really just don't seem to have any sort of issues with draining lots of battery real quick. The faster you ride, it seems to be the faster that it drains. Although we ended up at the end of the day, after riding about 3 hours, right around 40%. So we still had a lot more battery to give, in my opinion. So for a decent day out, it wasn't bad. Now, the only thing I will note is that as you drain the battery down, your power gets lower and lower, your maximum amount of power that you can do. That's kind of annoying, and how much throttle you use at certain times is going to change depending on what your battery is. So that gets a lot better when you go to an aftermarket battery controller, but I'm not going to really touch on that a whole lot here. When it's stock, that's something you really got to know as a consumer. Once you get below 50%, you're going to start to really lose some power that you normally would have. Now, we were still able to get it up to 40 miles an hour around that percentage, so top speed's not an issue. It might come into play with having some problems with climbing hills, maybe. I don't know. We really didn't really struggle with it, so I'm not going to note on that too much. But range is something that's going to vary from rider to rider. I'm not an aggressive rider. Meeker Extreme definitely rides a lot faster, harder than I do, so he's going to get less range than I do. So it just depends. Now, I mentioned in my last video that you should really consider, when you buy one of these bikes, purchasing a larger battery from the get-go. I think you should really lump that in there. But we'll touch on that, I think, a little bit more when I'll talk about price and what it really takes to, I think, match an actual real gas dirt bike. So, of course, something like the GPX Moto FSE 250E or even the 300 that we have out here with a full tank of gas, 2.5 gallon tank, I mean, realistically, you're going to be able to go well over 100 miles range. That's way more than these e-bikes will even do, I think, even with a large battery. So, that is definitely a negative for the e-bike stuff. Now, I think most of the time when I go out and ride for a day, I don't ride that much. If I'm only planning to ride 30 miles a trail, these bikes will definitely do that. I would say a stock battery, 30-ish miles of trail riding. Bigger battery, you're looking closer to 50. So I think they really do offer a great trail experience. Now, if you want the range, if you want to go further, it's just not there yet, I don't think. Not on this platform. But, once again, once we get into, if you're going to get a bigger battery, it's $2,000. So you're looking at, adding $6,000, that means it's going to cost just as much as a real dirt bike. And I think there's a lot of things that you get from a real dirt bike that you just don't get with these e-bikes. You go into upgrading controllers and handlebars and everything else, and you're easily spending $7,000. At that point, you could buy yourself a proper dirt bike and have a better suspension, more range, arguably more power in certain circumstances. So I think when it comes to if it's worth buying an electric dirt bike, it's a different experience. It's a lot of fun, and you really have to look at yourself and what you're riding. Maybe you have another bike, and this is something you want to play with, or maybe you go out and ride 20 miles of trails for the day and you're done. There's really good and bad, I think, on either side of this. The technology is just not quite there yet, in my opinion. Now, for you e-bike fanboys out of there, don't get mad at me. I absolutely loved riding this. This is a ton of fun. You can see out here, we have a blast riding this bike, and it's important to remember that we do enjoy it quite a bit. But here are some of my thoughts on electric versus gas dirt bikes, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching. We're going to be doing a couple more of these, so thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Ferret Face, out.